Hi everybody. Um, I wanted to give you some feedback about your work in the simulation and also ask for your help on a number of things. First of all, as I told you before, I think as a group, as a class, you've been doing a really good job. Let me start by getting out of the way all the technological and logistical frustration, which I absolutely understand that some of you or all of you have experienced, including myself. As I told you before, I've been teaching this class for several cycles, but this is the first time that I teach it fully online, and it's certainly different. Normally, we would do this type of big end of semester simulation where in several class meetings where we can break into groups and move around the room and screen breaking news on the board, etc. And of course, this was different. However, I think that you guys did a really good job with it. And I think that for the most part, you were able to get into your roles and communicate and follow up on your goals, right? So when a country approaches an international negotiations, there's a few things that we need to understand. First, what are the problems? What is it that we're negotiating over? What are we trying to solve? Second is, what are the goals of my country or the body that I'm representing in this round of negotiations? Obviously, even countries that are allied with each other, such as the P5+1 in this case, had different approaches to the problem and sometimes even conflicting positions or conflicting ideas of how to solve it. And so each country, each representative of a country needs to first and foremost define to themselves how do they see the problem, what are their goals, and what is their plan. And that's what I ask you to do in the first part, when you had to do in-group discussions. You should also know, because most of the time the representatives to the negotiations have to report back to their capital, have to report back to their home governments. So you should know how much leeway do you have there. Do you have to go and check every time you make a decision? Do you have some leeway? Can you make some decisions on your own and then just report back? So all of those things have to kind of be understood by the representatives ahead of time. And that was the pre-negotiation part that you've done inside your groups. The next stage will be opening the negotiations for discussion. And here again, I try to create the feeling of, yeah, we have a plenary session. We have a place where everybody, an actual negotiation table or room or auditorium, everybody sit down and can listen to each other. This was our discussion forum where I asked you to post opening statements, comment on them, and then later on I was hoping we'll get some proposals to surface into that plenary session. And eventually what you're doing right now is summarizing and posting closing statements. So that is one area of negotiation. The other area of negotiation is, of course, everything that happens in the breakout rooms, in the small rooms, in the hallways over lunch, where we usually see either bilateral negotiations, only, even in this case where we have 7 countries involved, only 2 countries negotiating with each other, or some kind of a more targeted multilateral negotiation where say only the P5+1 meet with each other but leave Iran out, or in this case, I know there were some groups like Russia that were trying to create coalitions within the larger group. So you reach out only to those countries that you want to talk to. And so that always happens as well. And I thought you were able to capture all of those things fairly well through the emails. And again, I understand that technology is cumbersome and I had to use different platforms, but that was good. And then the third part, of course, is the ongoing in-group negotiations and decision making that you have to do while, okay, you got a proposal, say that you are China, you got a proposal from Russia, you have to go back to your own government or to your own group in this case and discuss it. And I thought that most teams, most groups, most students, most teams, most groups got into that fairly well. And that was great to see also. I also believe or saw sometimes more clear, sometimes it was more kind of indirect or in the background, that at least a number of you had a hard time stepping into the role and separating what you feel or how you feel about the case from what the country you're representing would like to do here. And I think that this is not uncommon for diplomats all around the world. And the reason for that is that a lot of diplomats are career bureaucrats or technocrats, right? There are diplomats, they've been working at the UN or at embassies and consulates around the world for many years. Now, aside from high level or high exposure ambassadors, most of those lower level diplomats are career diplomats. They'll be there regardless of who the president is, regardless of who's heading the government. And so sometimes they have to serve under, in the case of the United States, under a Democrat regime. Sometimes they have to serve under the Republican administrations. I'm sorry, regime was not the right word to use here. So sometimes it's Democrat administration, sometimes it's a Republican administration. Same goes in the UK. Sometimes it is the Labour government, the Labour Party that's in power. Sometimes it's the Conservatives, and so on and so forth. Even in China, a same career diplomat could be serving under different administrations or different leaders, but you still have to represent your country. So even if you are you don't believe in Biden and in his foreign policy, if you don't give up your job, you still have to represent the Biden administration when you come to the negotiation table. And so while I understand that this was kind of an interesting exercise or something a bit uncomfortable for some students to represent another country, this is also not divorced from real world diplomatic work and negotiations. And so where we are right now, is that what I would like you to do right now is to complete your work within your groups, within the simulation, post your closing statements. I'll summarize with and see if we got to any agreements. In fact, we didn't have much in multilateral plenary proposals, and so I'm not sure that we can conclude that anything was completed in these week-long negotiations. And again, this is not unlike real-world processes where negotiations could take days, weeks, months, or years sometimes. You know that from the cases, some of the cases that we read, but you also know that from but you also experienced it here as well. And so in terms of debriefing, we will do that in a number of ways. And the first one is that I'm releasing, and you should have gotten an email communication about that as well, a peer review. And this is where I would like you to go into that survey and ask everybody to participate and grade your peers in your team and grade yourself about the work that you've done in the simulation. The reason I ask for that is that I reviewed all the different communications, emails, group discussions, but number one, I didn't have access to your WhatsApp chats or other ways that you communicated with each other. And number two, I have kind of a general sense who did what, but I don't know everything. And this is where you can provide me with some information so I can reward students who went above and beyond, and then be aware of students who were much more free riding on the group in this case. So that's the first part of feedback that I want from you. Another level of debriefing we are going to do as part of your final assignment for the class, where I will ask you to reflect and think more deeply about how this exercise relates to the rest of the semester, to the rest of the course material that we reviewed. And I will publish those instructions in the next couple of days. And then finally, I will also put an anonymous survey where I want you to provide me with feedback on how I designed and ran the simulation. Again, this is just about the simulation itself. And again, this is because it's the first time that I'm running this kind of simulation completely online, and I would really like to know how it looked like, how you experienced it from your point of view. So next time, if I again teach this class on fully online, I'll be able to hopefully do a better job in that specific exercise. So I hope you enjoyed the simulation and that it was a good learning experience from you. And I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing your feedback, and of course also the closing statements and the end of the simulation work. So thank you for playing the simulation, and I'll be in touch soon.